I used to think love was a promise you could wrap around yourself like a blanket, soft, warm, and unshakable in the cold nights of life. Ethan made that promise to me on a quiet spring evening, his voice steady as he said, "I'm yours forever, Lila, no matter what." I believed him. We were 3 years into our marriage when the first crack appeared, not a loud shatter, just a hairline fracture. I didn't even notice it at first. Ethan had started working later, explaining it was quarter-end chaos at the firm. Sometimes he'd come home after midnight, loosening his tie with the weariness of a man fighting for our future. I'd wait up with dinner, kept warm, the TV quietly flickering in the background, and he'd smile at me like I was the one thing that made the long hours worth it. But small things began to gnaw at me. A faint perfume on his shirt that wasn't mine. The sudden way he angled his phone screen away from me. The unexplained weekend networking events. Still, love can make you blind, or worse, it can make you willfully ignorant. I told myself I was overthinking, that Ethan was loyal, that forever meant forever. One Thursday, while folding laundry, I found a restaurant receipt in his jacket pocket. Dinner for two at a place we had always said was too fancy for just us. My stomach tightened. I stared at the date, last Saturday. I'd spent that night curled up on the couch watching a movie, thinking he was at a late client dinner. I told myself there had to be an explanation. There had to be. A week later, my friend Tessa suggested lunch downtown. As I crossed the street toward the cafe, I froze. There, on the corner patio of a different restaurant, sat Ethan, laughing, leaning forward, his hand brushing across a woman's. She had dark hair, an easy smile, and an intimacy in her eyes that made me feel like an intruder in my own life. I didn't go to lunch. I didn't even confront him that night. Instead, I kept my distance, quietly collecting the fragments of a truth I didn't want to accept. Phone bills with late-night calls to an unfamiliar number. A hotel booking under his name for a conference he'd never mentioned. The subtle glow on his face when he texted someone in another room. Finally, on a rainy Sunday, I asked him directly, "Ethan, is there someone else?" His pause told me everything. He didn't rush to deny it. He didn't even meet my eyes at first. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Yes." The word didn't hit like an explosion. It was quieter than that, like the sound of a candle being snuffed out. He told me her name was Claire, that it just happened, that he still loved me but couldn't deny his feelings for her. And then, like he was offering me some kind of mercy, he added, "I never wanted to hurt you. The truth is, people who betray you rarely want to hurt you. They just want what they want and hope you'll survive the wreckage." I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just nodded, walked to our bedroom, and began packing my suitcase. He followed me, begging to talk it through, but I'd already realized something vital. Forever isn't a word. It's a choice you make every single day. And he had stopped choosing me a long time ago. I moved out that night. Weeks passed. Friends called. My mother visited. But the nights were the hardest. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying moments, our wedding vows, his hand in mine at the hospital when I broke my wrist, the way he used to look at me like I was home. One evening, Tessa sent me a picture she'd seen online. Ethan and Claire at Wine Festival, smiling like a couple on a magazine cover. It should have hurt more than it did. But instead, I felt a strange relief. He wasn't my forever anymore. And maybe that was a blessing. Months later, I was sitting alone at a small coffee shop, reading a novel, when a man asked if he could take the seat across from me. He was tall, kind-eyed, and didn't feel the need to fill every silence. We talked about books, about travel, about how neither of us really believed in meant to be anymore. But we believe in choosing each other day after day. I'm not sure where it will lead. But I know this. I will never again accept a forever that's shared with someone else. The man from the coffee shop's name was Daniel. We didn't rush into anything. In fact, for the first few months, it was just casual coffee meetups, the kind where you could leave without a goodbye hug and still feel comfortable seeing each other next week. He never asked too much about my past. But one evening, after we'd wandered a local art fair together, he said, "You have this way of looking at paintings, like you're trying to see the truth in them. Most people just look. It startled me. No one had noticed that before. Ethan never did. Daniel wasn't trying to impress me. He simply saw me. And that, in itself, was something I'd forgotten was possible. Meanwhile, news of Ethan traveled back to me through whispers. Claire had moved into the apartment we once shared. People told me they looked happy. But a year after our divorce was finalized, I ran into a mutual acquaintance who said quietly, "I'm sorry to hear about Ethan." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "She left him," the acquaintance said. "Apparently she found out he was seeing someone else." It was almost too poetic. Ethan, promising another woman forever, only to share it again with someone new. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't even feel pity. Just confirmation. He was who he was, and he always would be. Daniel and I grew closer over time, not in a cinematic rush, but in a steady, deliberate way. He learned how I took my coffee. I learned the way he shut his eyes when listening to music he loved. We talk about fears, mistakes, and a strange comfort in finding someone who didn't demand perfection. One night, 2 years after that rainy Sunday when Ethan admitted the truth, Daniel and I were walking along the waterfront. He took my hand, not in the careless, habitual way Ethan once had, but with intention. "I don't know what the future holds," he said, "but if you choose me tomorrow, I'll choose you back. Every day after, too. No promises of forever. No illusions of perfection. Just the kind of love that wakes up each morning and decides, I'm still here." And for me, that was more than enough. Months later, I found myself back at that same coffee shop where I first met Daniel. The air smelled of cinnamon and roasted beans, the same as before, but everything felt different, lighter. I wasn't the woman who sat here 2 years ago, numb and carrying the wreckage of a promise someone else had broken. Daniel was across from me, telling a story that made me laugh, so hard I had to set down my cup. His hand rested over mine on the table, warm, steady. For a moment, I caught my reflection in the cafe window. My eyes weren't clouded anymore. The hurt had faded, replaced by something quiet but powerful, self-respect. I realized then that Ethan had been right about one thing. Forever isn't guaranteed, but he was wrong about how it's kept. It's not a word you say to seal someone's heart. It's the way you show up every single day, without making them doubt their place in your life. And as Daniel squeezed my hand, I knew forever wasn't something I was chasing anymore. I'd found something better, a love that was mine alone.